All right, let's get going. So today I have two topics, and they're gonna merge into each other. The first one is I want to go over something that I've been working on on my home network, which is setting up a IDS. I did quite a bit of research into different options, and so I feel like I ended up settling with one, and I'm really happy with it, so I want to share how I got there. And it's actually super simple in the grand scheme of things, and it shouldn't take too long to get set up. The next thing I'm going to be going into is how to do binary triage of a malware sample using the FlareVM, and so I'm going to get into that.
What does binary triage mean?
So binary triage is like the initial phases of malware analysis, right? So you get a sample, you want to figure out, what does it do, so you want to figure out what it does. What are some indicators, network indicators, or some static indicators that show that it's malicious?
Okay.
Sorry, that was a mouthful. Okay. So a little bit about me. I'm from Texas. I moved to Utah 4 years ago to go to school at UVU. I started the cybersecurity club at UVU with Mike. Mike also helped me get my first job as a sysadmin at Aquaveo. From there, I went on to be a Linux sysadmin at UVU, to where I am at now, working for FireEye, which is a cybersecurity company. We do cybersecurity for about like 40% of the Fortune Global 4000 companies. So pretty cool stuff that we get to do there. I love red versus blue competitions and CTFs. Those are super fun to me. Love playing video games. All right, so that's enough about me. So jumping into it. A couple months ago, I started thinking about the devices on my home network, and how I didn't really know what they were doing, and I wasn't really comfortable with that. And so I started thinking about the attack surface area of my home network, or of home networks in general. So if you're like me, I have a ton of IoT in my house. I have a smart lock. I have tons of Google Homes. I have a smart thermostat, smart lights, everything, because I love automation. But I didn't really know exactly what those devices were sending over the network, and I wanted an easy way to kind of figure that out. You also have multiple laptops and PCs with different users on them with varying levels of, browsing habits that can bring in certain threats. Guest users, same thing. Then also, if you're like me, you might have other things on your network, like a home lab, like Plex, websites or databases and VMs. And I also wanted to protect those. And maybe some of this is overkill, but if you're like me, this stuff is awesome. And so I wanted to build as secure of a network as I possibly could. All right, so my main goal with setting up an IDS is gaining visibility into a network. I wanted to get network visibility, and I wanted to get some host-based visibility. So those were my main goals with this. I'm not saying that you're going to stop every attack, or it's going to alert you every time something happens, but you're going to have way more visibility into your network if you get this set up. So as I was evaluating different tools out there, my goals were everything had to be free, for sure. And so I looked into a few different things. Snort, Bro, OSSEC. You guys are probably or a lot of you are probably familiar with these. But so Snort is a network-based intrusion detection tool. Same with Bro. It can be used to analyze network traffic. OSSEC and Wazuh are both host-based agents that can help you look for signs of intrusion or alert on certain things or collect data. And I'll get into these specifically. Other tools out there that do what I'm going to show you in a second. One of them is Alien Vault, which was purchased by AT&T, which is now AT&T Security. And this is a free tool that you can use. It is free, but it's a little bit proprietary in that you can't really dig into the guts of it to see what it does. And so I didn't really like that tool. I did try it out for a few weeks, but Alien Vault is an option, but I'm not going to go over it in this. All right, so as I was looking over different tools, I tried out quite a few of them. I installed Bro and Snort on standalone, on a Linux box. which was cool, but it was quite a bit of work configuring everything. And so the one that I ended up settling on is Security Onion. So Security Onion is really cool. I really like it. So it's free, open source, based on Linux, and it uses these publicly available tools and just configures them for you ahead of time. And what's really awesome about it is that you can dig into it and change things and tweak things, or maybe say you have your own bro or snort rules from whatever repository. You can upload those as well. Really awesome. Security Onion was created by former employees of the company I currently work at. This was a project that they had on the side, and they actually ended up leaving the company to start the Security Onion Foundation, which is so that's the origins of this, which is pretty cool too. Like I mentioned, it incorporates Snort, Bro, Wazuh, Squirt, CyberChef on it. So all the tools that I was looking at before are included in Security Onion, which I thought was awesome. One of the best things about Security Onion was how easy it is to set up, and we'll get to that in a second. So Security Onion is fairly simple to set up. However, there is a hurdle, which is the hardware requirements of Security Onion. So first off, for the VM, depending on your throughput, if you want to analyze all the traffic, you're going to have certain hardware requirements. So for me, I get about 800 megs down and like 30 up on my network, and I gave it 4 gigs of RAM. Actually, no, it's probably like 5 right now, but about 4 gigs of RAM, and right now it's at 4 CPUs on my VM, and 2 NICs, and that's all I need for the analysis. Now, in terms of the 2 NICs, let me explain where this would sit in your network by just showing you in my network where I have mine sit. All right. So if you can see this is the layout of my home network. You can imagine a router right here to the left of my switch. So we have all these devices that are wired in. You have my Wi-Fi right here. And so my IDS lives right here on the network.
Is this your actual home network?
This is my home network.
And you're showing it to us?
What's your address again?
Nothing's on my screen that I am not uncomfortable sharing, so it's all right.
Write down those MAC addresses.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're gonna do with those, but go for it.
Nothing's on your screen that you're not.
I don't think so. You're making me second guess myself, though. Okay.
Negative.
All right. So this is where it lives on my network. So in terms of the hardware requirements, what is required to analyze all the traffic on your network is you do need to forward traffic specifically to a monitor interface on your Security Onion IDS instance. And so what that requires is it does require some hardware that's capable of that. Now, there's different methods of achieving the same thing. What I do is I use my Ubiquity switch right here to mirror traffic from this port right here, port 1, to port 7 is what I decided to do. So port 1 is my uplink. So anything that comes in or out of my network is cloned to this other port and then sent over to Security Onion. Most smart switches support this feature. It doesn't have to be Ubiquity. That's just what I have. Yep.
There are switches you can buy for like less than $50. You don't have to buy expensive ones.
Yeah, not expensive, less than $50, easy.
Not easy.
Not easy. Possible, sorry. But it is possible. And then also, if you have a router, it'd probably be a beefier router, so unlikely that you'd have that in a home network, but you could also mirror traffic that way. But definitely the most economical, in my opinion, is just having a smart switch and then mirroring the traffic to your uplink. All right. Let's move on. We went over that. All right, so let's kind of jump into it, jump into Security Onion. And let me show you what it's capable of. So this is our website, securityonion.net, if you want to check it out. And I'm going to show you what my IDS looks like in my environment. All right. 1 second. Can you guys see that all right? All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the past 24 hours, I've collected over 300,000 different events just on my home network, which is quite a bit. And so that can be kind of hard to sort through, but that's where Kibana comes into play. So Kibana is very similar to Splunk and other tools of the same nature, where it helps you sort through a ton of data and logs, and it helps you do cool visualization. Oh my, I can't speak. Sorry. It helps you visualize a lot of data in different ways, which is pretty cool. Now, Security Onion comes pre-built with dashboards that show you all of this stuff, which is really cool. Let's see. So let me break down a few things about this dashboard. Oh, getting a tiny bit ahead of myself. So setting it up, I just want to say it's super simple. If you go to their website, to the getting started, it goes over the hardware requirements like I did. Installation. They give you an ISO. So an ISO you can load into a VM and just boot it and configure it. So as long as you have a machine that can load ISOs, you're good to go. So personally, I use Unraid at home, and using Unraid, oh, wrong one. Let's see. Oh, the scaling is going to be a little bit bad on this one. Let's see if I can zoom in here. So I use Unraid at home, and so I just loaded up a virtual machine. Let me see if I can pull this up. Please. There it is. All right, so once you load into the ISO, this is what you'll be presented with. You'll be presented with just the Security Onion desktop. There's an Install Security Onion button on the desktop. And so let me just show you how easy this is. So you run this. Sorry, it's a little bit weird because I'm going through like 2 remote desktop sessions right now. All right, there we go. Okay, so you have this, you have just like 6 prompts, and that's really all it is to get Security Onion set up. So you're going to select your language, you're going to configure, say, hey, here are my 2 interfaces, which going back to the hardware requirements, you have to have 2 interfaces, right? One that's getting traffic mirrored, the other is just for management, where you access the interface. Just a few prompts, and you'll be good to go. That's how easy it is. It's really not, as long as you get the hardware ready, not too hard. So I'm not going to go through this process, but I'm just showing you super simple once you get that ISO loaded into your VM. All right. So here's my dashboard. I've configured it a tiny bit different than when it ships to default. I added this cool little map just because it's not super useful, but I kind of like seeing where my traffic's going and coming from on my network. So let me show you some of the most important things about Security Onion. So first off is you could come here to NIDS. So NIDS is the network-based intrusion detection, as far as I understand it. So if you look here, I have a lot of miscellaneous activity. Something to keep in mind with setting up an IDS anywhere, a corporate environment or in your home, is that you have to do a little bit of tuning to tune out all the noise, because this miscellaneous traffic, I can guarantee you that 99% of that is all fine, and I don't want to see it. And so, I mean, just from this dashboard, I can hit this minus button and tune that out. That's just from the dashboard. I could go into the system itself and mute that rule or suppress it if I don't want to see it. But now you can see my counts are a little bit more reasonable here. Now, let's go down. So now we can get into the guts of it, right? Now that we've filtered out some of the noise. So we can see here there's a potential policy violation. You know, at home, I would probably mute this. I don't really care. Just showing that there's Spotify peer-to-peer traffic, which looking into that, that's actually my Google Homes, because there's a feature where they can talk to each other using this. Anyway, that's what I narrowed it down to. Suspicious user agent, those are some of my IoT devices. My network agent doesn't like those. It thinks that they're suspicious. Now, let's see. These ones are really interesting. If you look here, these are the poor reputation IPs, so there's anywhere between poor reputations to critical. These are really malicious, and these lists come from open sources, which is pretty cool. But you could see like different web crawlers and stuff. For in my case, because I have a few open ports with a couple websites, and so you can see them hitting your website. Or what if your IoT devices is are reaching out and talking to something? This isn't going to catch every malicious IP, but at least that you are catching at least a few million of them, or whatever is in that list. All right. The next one I want to look at.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Have you found anything cool in here before?
Yeah, no, I definitely have. I did nuke it for this presentation because I broke it as I was preparing for this presentation, tuning it, which luckily Security Onion, again, does not, it's only like 5 prompts to get it set up, so it's not the end of the world. But I have seen some pretty cool stuff here, and I have an example of one that I'm going to get to that's going to lead into the FlareVM. Okay. But yeah, no, I mean, I've seen IoT devices that were sending some stuff in clear text before. Unfortunately, I nuked it, and I took it offline. It was like a cheap smart light before I got Philips Hue, and it was sending credentials in plain text. And I'll show you how I found it. I went over here to Files, right here, and so here's where this is telling you all of the files that it's seen going over the network right here. So a lot of certs. Let's go down here. So I can look at text plain or text JSON. So these are all the plain text or JSONs going over my network, or in and out of my network. And so I can hit plain, and I can see, okay, the source IP and the destination IP. So maybe this one's reaching out quite a bit right there. And I can come down here, and you could download like a CSV too if that's easier for you to look at. But I like this because I can. So let's see. So America, Chicago. Profiles, picked it up. It gives me the MD5 hash. So if you wanted, you could like throw this into Virustotal if you weren't sure, to see if it's seen it before. Now, by default, Security Onion won't store all these files because that's, as you can imagine, can take up a ton of disk space. But you can configure it to say, hey, on this rule, maybe from this IP, you can store it. And so that's what I did, is I was like, hey, these are weird, and I stored it from that device, and then I noticed it was in plain text. So it can be really cool to see what your network's doing and find stuff. All right. DNS is kind of useful. You get to see all the DNS queries that are being made on your network. So for example, just based on this alone, can you guess what smart home stuff I have in my network?
You have Google Home.
Yeah.
You have HomeKit, so Apple stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chromecast.
Nest, yeah.
Nest, yeah, it's all there. There's a lot of connectivity checks, and I could go through this list, but it's interesting to see how kind of noisy some of these devices can be. And this is just in 24 hours that I'm getting, the Google Cast is 20,000 DNS queries. And it's very interesting. So, see, I have Plex in my environment.
Tower, that's your Unraid server, isn't it?
It is. There you go. Yeah, so you found my my main server. Okay. So far we've looked at NIDs, we've looked at DNS, we've looked at the files feature. Now what I want to look at, so something I want to talk about, so this is my syslog. So something that's great about the Elk stack, which is Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana, is that it's a stack for log management. Kibana is the front end. What's great about it is you can forward whatever you want to it. And so where I decided to get more visibility in my environment, I'm forwarding all my firewall logs as well to my to Security Onion. So Security Onion can aggregate a ton of information and show it to you. It doesn't just have to be what's built in. So if you look here, I can go down. So I can see the network traffic coming in and out, which this could be great for correlating events, right? So you can see it from the firewall level going down. I don't log everything because that would be a ton of information. I only log certain certain types of things. Like for example, I have 443 open, and so anything coming through that port is logged, but not outbound. So anyway, that's another cool feature about it. Okay, I think we're getting to the point. Let me show you Bro briefly. So you can see Bro logs all the invalid certs. It actually has a few juicy things in it too, but I'm not going to get to that quite yet because that's going to lead into the Flare demo. The last thing I want to show you here is now I want to talk about OSSec or Wazuh. So now I've shown you all the network-based visibility that we have, and you can see the applications that this would have in both like a corporate world and also the usefulness of it in your home world. Now, what I wanted to get as well is host-based visibility. And so in this case, I set up a Wazuh agent, which I'm going to get into Wazuh here in a second, on my desktop. So what is Wazuh? So the Wazuh agent is open source and free, as per my requirements. But what's awesome about it is just the number of capabilities that it has. So what's great about it is that it gathers logs, first off. So it runs on Mac, Windows, Linux. Now, in this case, I'm only talking about Windows, but its functionality is very similar. But it will gather all the Windows event logs and the security logs and send it to my IDS. So I get to see, okay, what's happening on these endpoints. And I've actually been able to figure out application issues on my Windows box just from the logs, seeing all the errors, application errors for certain applications. I was able to resolve some issues on my desktop. File integrity monitoring. It monitors files on your system that it deems as critical, and you can adjust this as you wish, and will alert you if they're monitored. Yeah, what's up?
So I want to make sure I understood this right.
Yep.
So the first one you showed us was called Security Onion.
Yep.
That runs on a server on a box, right?
Yes.
Does this run on the server too?
That's actually a really good point. So these two products can run separately. But what's great is Security Onion supports it, and so they integrate together. So the Security Onion has a Wazuh server, per se, that lets these clients connect to it, and that's super simple to set up as well.
So like you install this on your laptop or whatever,
Yeah.
and it sends it to Security Onion.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just making sure I understood that.
Yep. It can detect vulnerabilities. I'm not going to get into everything here, but what you need to know is that it will, it's just a free and open source agent that can help. It doesn't by default out of the box block anything per se, but just gives you visibility, and it's very lightweight.
Is it like a virus scanner?
It can be, yes.
I don't have to pay for virus scanners.
No, okay. This will not replace your antivirus by any means.
Okay.
It's a different tool. You can consider, if you're talking in like security terms, like an EDR tool that's open source, right? So for like intrusion detection or response, right? Because you get a look at what happened on the system. But it's just really nice to have. Personally, I have it installed usually on all of my devices. So my laptop, my desktop, a few Linux servers, they all send logs to my Security Onion instance, which leads to great correlation ability, right? So say somebody goes to a bad website, and we'll get there in a second. You could see exactly, okay, what happened on the network from the router level from the DNS level as well for resolution, from the NIDS perspective, which is a network-based intrusion detection, so say like a rule triggered, think it was malicious. And then on the host, you could see, okay, what perhaps did this malware do based on some things that happened or changes that happened on the system. All right, so let me show you what that looks like. I don't have it configured perfectly. Keep that in mind because I did this all last night, setting up. It could be better. But so, for example, let's look at this. So this is a successful or authorized event coming from my, let's see. So here are all the events, right, from my desktop. And you can see here that my desktop was off during this time, probably updated while I was at work. So we have different categories. We have authorized events, which are probably like authentication succeeded, which can be really useful. Say like in the corporate world, like say like an unauthorized user, steals credentials and logs in, it logs that. Let's look at the bad word matching. These ones are usually the most interesting. All right. So if you look here, this is something that this is one, like I mentioned before, it monitors critical parts of the system and alerts you if they change. And so in this change, it's saying, hey, this was my old sum. Hey, this is my new sum. So something changed it, and this is a Windows registry key. Let's keep going down, and we'll find something more interesting. Another system changed. That's just the time. I'm not worried about that one. Let's see. Let's go all the way back. Let's go to this one. Yeah, most of these are going to be registry key changes. Let's see. I'll show you one more example here. And this agent, by default, doesn't do a whole bunch, but if you are interested, the capabilities are pretty ranging. So, for example, log data collection. This one's really cool. Let me show you this one. Virustotal integration. So for those of you who don't know what Virustotal is, Virustotal is a website that basically lets you check files against all the different security vendors out there. So you can upload a file, or you can check a file hash to see if something's malicious or not, or just to see if you want to know what other vendors think about it. And so in this case, let's see, So you can see my company, has this signature for it, or this detection for it.
Acronis is just suspicious.
Where are they?
At the very top.
Oh, suspicious. That is pretty funny. Anyway, so while this agent has integration into it, which is pretty cool. So what it does is you could say, hey, in this folder, if any file gets added to it, run it through Virustotal or check it. You can either check the hash, and if Virustotal has seen it, it'll just tell you. If not, it can upload it for you. And so you can have this set up, and I did this as a test. For example, let's see, use case. So it's pretty simple. You just you sign up for Virustotal and put in your API key here, and this is all just, and it'll tell you where this configuration file is on the system. And then you can have it monitor a directory. And so what I did is I had it monitor my downloads directory, because typically that's where new files end up, right? I'm downloading stuff on Chrome. That way all my files going to Chrome are checked against Virustotal, and then I would get an alert if one of them exceeded a threshold of, hey, 4 vendors think it's bad, might want to look into it. Other capabilities I'm not going to get into, but it's because I'm not an expert on this, but I spent a good couple nights diving into this, and it's awesome. And I think it's really sweet. And a lot of enterprises pay a lot of money for things that are very similar to this, that are not open sourced. So I feel like with a little bit of effort, you can get this to a place where, I think it's really valuable to know, especially if you're trying to move into a kind of IR role. It might be useful to kind of know what these mechanisms are, because they're very similar across most products out there that enterprises use. All right, so now we're gonna move into the Flare demo. Hopefully I'm not taking up too much time here.
You have all the time you want.
Awesome.
Just know, after about an hour, people tend to fall asleep.
I'm hoping to finish within 20 minutes. So if I could keep your attention span for 20, it's going to get really interesting here, at least in my opinion.
So far, it's been great.
Awesome. Good feedback. Okay. All right. So now we're going to do the segue. So on my home network, there's been a breach. Malware has been run, and so using Kibana, I want to find it. So if you look down here, you got this counter right here. That tells you something's probably up.
What is it?
Okay. So this is actually one that I made, one of the dashboards that I made, to give me like a nice little visual thing, right? So it's telling me it's seen one thing, that it's a file that's confirmed malicious on Virustotal. And this is actually coming from the network side of things. So one thing that's cool, like I mentioned Virustotal before for the host level, what Security Engine will do too is if it sees any files in that file section, it actually checks them against Virustotal as well. That only applies to HTTP traffic or maybe like SMTP, not HTTPS because it's encrypted. But that's why you have it on the host as well. Okay, so remember I showed you Bro earlier. Bro is a very, very common network IDS. I'm going to filter out all the junk. So those invalid certs, right? And now, boom, let's see what we see here. We see team, Sumeru, malware, hash, registry match, which is interesting. Going to this destination IP address, which I'm going to copy. So that's not good. This is my desktop right here, the .20 address. And it's in India. That's interesting. So let's go to my dashboard. Dashboard. We're gonna get rid of those guys. All right. So now this is what's great about Kibana is you can search for anything. You can search for keywords, for IP addresses, doesn't matter. So now I see 63 events related to this IP address, which is based out of India. We can see kind of a time frame too of our communications with this. Okay, now let's get into this. This is where it gets cool.
Bro, weird.
Yeah, bro, weird. So that means there's something weird going on. It doesn't know exactly what. It's just like there's something weird, and it's going to flag it. All right. So now it's going to tell me what ports it used, which is really useful, right? So I see some SSH traffic here. I see some HTTP traffic. Now, what's great is a lot of malware uses HTTP, which means you can look at what it's doing over the wire if you have visibility like we have set up here with this IDS. All right. So let's see here. This is where we can dive into the data a little bit. So we're seeing here that my computer is talking with this IP address, which we know is in India. And we could, if we wanted, as an added step. I usually like doing this. In this case, it might not be very useful. But you can actually throw IP addresses into Virustotal and see what people think about it. In fact, you could, I'm not going to sign in right now. But you can see the downloaded files that has been seen downloading before, or that people have been seen downloading from it, and it will tell you the detection rates on it too. So in this case, doesn't tell me much, but that's because I own this server, so good thing that doesn't say anything bad about me. But it is a good place to look if you're unsure of an IP address and kind of want to see what Virustotal thinks. All right, let's go back. All right. So if we scroll down here, let's look at the file description here. All right, so we have an IP address, we got a port, and we have something called malware.exe. Great.
So this is saying you downloaded that file?
Yeah, so bro looked at it going over my network in plain text, right? And it alerted on this because, A, it matched the malware registry, but 2, it's a little bit odd for executables to be going over HTTP. So it did flag it as suspicious, at least in my case with the rule set that comes with default security union. All right, so let's go down. Let's see what else we got.
So did you intentionally download this malware, or is the author just shameless?
I did intentionally download this malware. Spoiler alert, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, wait, just let's go with the role play. No, I accidentally downloaded this and it ransomwared my machine. Well, actually, no, at this point, we don't know what it does, right? But let's find out what it does.
Malware on it.
Okay. That was my naming scheme. That was my naming scheme of it. But, okay. Let's pretend we don't know, but let's pretend we think it's malicious based on, okay, now my computer's doing weird stuff. Maybe it's behaving weird. By the way, this malware was not picked up by my antivirus products. I have Silence and Malwarebytes running. Both of them don't detect on this file, so.
That sucks.
Right, okay, so So this file is here. If we had enabled the saving of these files, we would have been able to just pull it right from this page from Security Onion. I didn't have it turned on for this. However, let's just pretend I do have a copy of the sample. All right, so let's jump into it. Let me go ahead and open up this slide. So that ends the Security Onion demo. Okay, so what is the FlareVM? So the Flare is developed by the FireEye Labs Advanced Reverse Engineering team. That's a mouthful. That's why we call it Flare. So the Flare team. Oh yeah, what's up?
Is it open source?
Yes, it is open source. That is one of my requirements for this presentation. Like I mentioned, everything has to be open source. So the FlareVM was developed by this team. All they do day and night is analyze the toughest malware for the most sensitive engagements in the world. So our incident response teams at FireEye, when we see a file and we're like, oh shoot, what the hell is this thing? We send it to our Flare team and they'll dissect it and figure out what it does. And they're really awesome guys. And I have the opportunity to talk with them and get advice and some training from them, and they're really cool guys. So they started making a VM for themselves to use as a template with all the tools that they wanted, and they said, hey, why don't we maybe polish it up a little bit and let's make it public, which is what they did. So the FlareVM, you can grab it on GitHub. Just Google FlareVM, you'll find it. How it works is you can use a fresh Windows 10 or 7 box, and all you do is just run this Python script, and it will install it all for you, and it will turn it into a FlareVM. So pretty simple. Don't run this on your home machine or something. Gonna regret it. Do it in a fresh install, like on a VM.
It takes forever too.
Oh yeah, I did it to.
That it only runs on a Windows 10 box?
No, Windows 10 and 7.
Oh, 7, okay.
Yeah, you can use either. But
bring your own license.
yes, that's exactly why we did it that way, so we don't have to worry about licensing. So, all right. But yeah, it takes forever. Keep that in mind. That's why I didn't tell you guys to do it for this presentation, because it takes sometimes hours, because it's got to reboot a few times and download stuff from all over the internet. Anyway, let's jump into it. Now, I'm not claiming to be an expert with the FlareVM. I have done training with it, and I have been using it for a little while now. I think it's awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run you guys through what I would do when I get a sample. The first things that I would do and how I pull it apart. All right. So my most used tools, I'm not going to bother telling you about all of these. I'm just going to show you. Most used tools, CFF Explorer, CyberChef, Resource Hacker. There's some other open source tools that I download and use, but we'll get into this. So I'm going to tear this apart into two sections to make it a little bit easier to understand. We're going to talk about static analysis, and then we're going to talk about dynamic analysis. And sorry about my stock photos there. I was going to get something cooler if I didn't have time. So static analysis, dynamic. So static is what it's going to be is just looking at the file without even running it. So we're going to see if we can decode it, dig into the code and see maybe what it does. Look for static indicators that would tell us that this is malicious and what it's doing. The next one is dynamic, which is a little bit funner, where we actually get to detonate the malware, and we get to see, okay, what does it do to the system, which is pretty awesome. Okay, all right, so let's jump into it. Now, bear with me here. All right, so 81 Labs. All right, so here's our malware. This is the malware.exe, which, one second, got renamed.
Totally not malware.exe.
Yeah, okay, totally not malware.exe. All right, so let's start with static. So one of the most common tools that we use is called strings. So what strings does is it pulls out anything that's human readable, or maybe that's not the best word. It pulls out ASCII text. There we go. Thank you. Letters and stuff. So in this case, we're looking at it. It's not very much useful here. when we go down, we get to see a few cool things. I'm not going to get into these. I'm going to show you how I would normally do it. So this is just a nicer Windows command line. That's all this is.
Okay, shrink it just a little bit because the projector's off. Just
Oh, okay.
a little bit.
Like,
Yep.
does that work? All right. Now, this is going to get a tiny bit technical, but I'm going to do my best to explain. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. So I explained what strings does. It pulls out ASCII text where we can look for, sentences or file names and stuff in the file that's not encoded. Now, there's an open source tool called Floss, which is made by the Flare team. Which what it does is a lot of files will hide their strings. The malware doesn't want you to know what it does. And so it does its best to not just reveal it right away. Floss, what it does is it attempts to trick the malware into revealing itself and what it does, using a few different machine learning models. And I don't understand exactly how it works on the back end. I just know it works, and it works pretty good. So we're going to do floss -q because I want to limit my output. Oh, that's actually first. Let's change directories to 801 Labs. Okay. Floss-q, and then let's do the file name, which is malware. Now the next thing I'm going to do is another open source tool.
Hit Control ++ a few times.
Okay.
Or that.
I don't know why I did that. That's what it did when I did it. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is pipe it through another open source tool called Rank Strings, which you can get these all separately on GitHub, or you can use the FlareVM, which is way easier. So what Rank Strings does is actually brand new. One of my friends on that team recently worked on this and released it publicly just like a month ago. What it does is it uses a machine learning algorithm to go through all those strings. Remember, we looked at all those strings, all that text, and it's kind of hard to sift through. It uses machine learning to put the most interesting stuff right at the top for you to look at. It's not perfect, but it's definitely a good place to start, as opposed to having a big file with all these stuff and having to scroll through. So I pipe it through rank strings, and let's do strings. Let's do malware strings.txt. So I'm just piping it to a file right here because I want to just have time to look it over. Now, this does take a second because it's running it through two machine learning algorithms, which probably have not been tuned. They're not really tuned for performance. They're tuned to do the job. So they take, depending on how big the file is, can take 30 seconds to a minute or two, depending on how big it is. Let's give it just a second. Does this make sense? What's going on here? All right, cool.
Curious, how big is malware.exe?
That is actually a good question. I don't know. Let's see. 900 kilobytes.
It's so big.
And this is running on a VM on
Th-
your computer now?
This is running on a VM that probably does not have as much power as I should have given it. So you could beef this up and make it faster, but regardless, it's going to be a little bit slow just because we're piping it through two different engines.
Are these tools multi-threaded?
Don't know. I didn't make them, and I bet you the owner doesn't know either, but I can ask him. All right, let's see. All right. Luckily, we have a few other things we can start looking at. So at this point, let me get back to normal zoom. We'll let this run on the side. Typically, oh, it's done. Oh, yeah, there's my impatient. Okay, so let's look at malware strings. All right. So the most important stuff is at the top.
Explorer.exe.
All right.
Well, that's a virus.
Do you see some? Do you see?
Apple1_payload.exe.
The word payload. Malware authors love to use the word payload. Or they usually forget to change the name. And so, okay, so that tells me a lot. But what that tells me is that it's probably dropping another file. If I'm not going to do it all right here, but if you look through this file itself is not super malicious. It doesn't do anything super bad. But what it does is it drops another malware sample that is really bad. So let's find that sample. So typically I look at strings first, but what you really should look at is the PE header for the file. So there's different ways to do it. There's actually quite a few tools on the FlareVM to do it, but I love CFF Explorer. So let's go and open the file. And don't look at that. Let's look at... You don't laughs. Okay. Okay, so for those of you who don't know a lot about Windows binaries or Windows files programs, is that they all have things called PE headers, which are the portable executable headers, which tells the Windows what to do with the file. So it has some useful information in it. If you look here, this is some of the PE header. It has the file size, the PE size, when it's created. Now this information can be modified, so you can't really entirely trust it. But you could look at some other things. And now we're going to dive into some numbers here. I'm not going to get too much into them, but a lot of this is useful. But what I think is most important for us is so I usually start with the import directory. So with Windows executables, you have things called imports, which I don't know if you've ever seen a Windows DLL before, but those are usually libraries or files that are called by other files. And so in this case, we have an import directory, and we can see what it's calling. Nothing super useful here. If we were looking at a DLL, we would see an export directory instead, where we could see what functions it's exporting to the file it's calling on. Here's what I want to look at. I want to look at the section headers. So the PE file, one of its main jobs is to lay out the format of a file. So in this case, we have malware.exe has these sections in it. Now, you can look up what the defaults are, but from what I've seen, or from the ones that I've seen, a lot of these look fine, but if you look here, this text BBS stands out. Because it's not actually, let's see if you guys can spot what's wrong. Actually, it might be a little bit tough, but if you look at the virtual size and the raw size on these files, typically, let me see, one sec. So what malware loves to do is it loves to hide files within itself, and usually encode them or something, and the PE headers are a good way of giving that away. So if you look here, the virtual size is different than the raw size, and that's a huge red flag. Very rarely is that ever the case, but malware authors love to do it. And so in this case, this is a big indicator that something's up. What?
All the virtual sizes are different from the raw sizes.
Right. They might be a tiny bit different, but this fact it's showing up as 0. They usually don't put anything in for it. If they are a little bit different, what that means is virtually they're different than what they actually are on the disk. How do I explain that? I'm not an expert on this, but as far as I understand it, I think what it means is what it should be, as opposed to what it actually is on the disk, if that makes sense. So that's not matching up the raw size and virtual size. And so if you look here at the bottom, right, I could click around and it pulls out the ASCII, a little preview, right? When I look at this text BBS, look what I see. This program cannot be run in DOS.
Well, that's another EXE, isn't it?
That's another EXE, right?
Yeah.
I bet you this is that level 1 payload that we saw in the strings. We might not have been as lucky to get that level 1 payload string. This is just not super well made. But this is a bit dead giveaway. In fact, a lot of times too, you wouldn't even be able to see this ASCII. We got really lucky here as well, but our work isn't done. So there's another program called Resource Hacker. So it's telling me that there's a resource hidden in it, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and bear with me here. Desktop 801 malware. All right. So I'm pulling out this resource called x86. I'm just going to save as bin. So just save as bin. Usually I save executables as bin files, kind of what I at least have been trained to do. Usually don't save them as executables right away. So let's just put them in that folder. Now let's run strings on this one. I'm not going to do the whole, let's just do strings. Okay, so we know there's a hidden resource, right? But when I open it up, I'm getting a lot of L's. That's kind of weird, right? What do you think is going on? Why does this binary have a ton of L's?
Stop.
Oh, sorry.
Obfuscation.
Yeah, you got it. Okay. So this file is can I pronounce it? Obfuscated. Oh my gosh, I can't talk tonight. All right. Okay. So now let's decode this thing. Let's figure out what's going on. So not to dig into the bytes too much, but I do want to open this up in 010 editor, which is just a binary editor. Let's dive in. I just want to see what this file looks like. So it's open file, desktop, 801, malware. All right. So we've got a program cannot be run in DOS mode, so we know it's executable. But what really gives it away, this MT right here. Pro tip, that usually means that actually no, that means that it's a binary file, like that has a PE header. So let's go down. So if we look here at this file, there's no really good strings in it at all. It's all kind of messed up. I'm looking at the bytes real quick. Bear with me here. Let's see. I'm looking for something. Typically you could find, so if there's different kinds of encoding. I'm not going to get into all of them, but a lot of the times malware researchers love to encode files with XOR. And so one thing that can actually give away XOR is if you see a lot of repeated entries in the binary, which I'm not really seeing any. So let's just go ahead and go to the next part, which is how do we decode it? So some of you might be familiar with a tool called CyberChef. CyberChef is awesome if you don't know it. You could go to a website. There's a website online that you could jump into CyberChef, or if you don't want to, say, share your data with the website, you can always download it and run it locally, which is what we did here in the FlareVM. So we have our inputs, we have our output, and then we have a recipe. So what we're trying to do is get from point A, the input, to point B, to get it to where we want it to be. In this case, we have a file. So we're going to go ahead and open a file as the import. So let's go ahead and go to malware. Oh, no. 801. Malware. Open. Okay. I'm also going to do something. I'm going to add the head function. So the head function is just going to limit it to like 10 lines because we don't want to see because we want to actually be able to look at the output. So we look here, DOS mode, a lot of garbage. It's encoded like we saw before with all the L's. So we have a few different tools we can use. The magic tool is great if you don't really know what's going on. It'll try as much as it can, as many operations as it can against the file. Or in this case, we can also try an XOR brute force, because typically malware a lot of times is encoded in XOR. So let's see. Let's see what happens when we bake this. It didn't like that. Let's try 2 keys. Didn't like that either. So that didn't work, the XOR brute force. Pipe it through magic. Might take a second.
I like the little Enigma machine.
Yeah, isn't it nice?
Or that's the cracker, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Okay, while that's running, What did it find? Let's get rid of this guy. Oh, we'll let that bake. All right, 1 second. I'm going back to this XOR editor. That's kind of interesting. Not exactly what I want to see, though. All right, let's go back to CyberChef. All right, this is what I want to see. Got a URL to code. So what it will do is it'll give you the recipes that it thinks are most likely gonna give you what you want. In this case, actually, both of these don't. I might have messed up on resource hacker. Let's see.
They loaded the malware, not the resources.
Why don't you just run it?
Oh, wait. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. That's what it was. Wow, okay, really good catch. I totally missed that. So what I did is I actually loaded the malware up again and not the thing I pulled out. There we go. Thank you so much. Wait, where did I load that into? I loaded into... there it is, yeah. Yeah, that's what it was. Thank you. I was like, what's going on here? I'm not getting anything useful. All right. So... In fact, I think I opened up the wrong one and I did. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Okay. Thanks for pointing that out. There. Okay, now let's open up the bin file. All right. So let's check this thing. So it is definitely encoded. But like I was mentioning before, XOR is a very common method of encoding. So if we look in this file, without staring at it too long, something stands out. And you'll see it even more as we go down. Something's repeating itself a lot.
A lot of
80s.
There you go. A lot of 80s. So the reason why, not getting to the math of XOR, but man, I wish.
is that like
Exclusively.
is that like
Those are the zeros,
Yeah,
basically.
it's
The
writing
blank
over the
space.
zeros.
Yeah, it's writing over the zeros.
wait, does that mean we can figure out the key now?
It does. In fact, we don't even have to use the brute forcing function of
Isn't that the
CyberChef.
key?
That is the key. Spoilers. Let's check it out.
So the key should be 80.
Right. So we have this file. We're going to do XOR, just XOR. And the key, we think, is 80. And you'll get better at this as you look at more and more samples.
No, not 80.
Hold up.
Oh yeah, 80.
It's 80. Because now we get, this is what you look for. It's so funny, but you just, the second you see this is program cannot be run in DOS, you're just like, yes! Or the MZ at the beginning too. Those two things are just like a yes moments. Because now this bin file that was encoded is no longer. So let's go ahead and get rid of this head, and then let that run, and then let's download this guy. Let's just do malware decoded .bin.
Or .exe, right?
Yes, however, we don't want to run it yet. We're in the static analysis. I'm going to detonate this thing in a second. I promise.
Please don't rickroll us.
You know what? I thought about it, but it's not nearly as cool as that. I thought about that too late. All right. All right. So now we want to get this guy. I'm going to cut it over to our desktop. 801 Labs. Paste. All right. Now, back to this guy. Because now it's decoded. Now let's see what's cool in it with strings. So we want to do decoded. Malware decoded. There it is. And then let's rename this guy as well. Let's do malware decoded. The interesting thing about this too is that, you know, malware authors aren't dumb. Well, okay, some of them are, but or lazy. A lot of them are lazy, and we'll get into why being lazy can really come to bite malware authors once we decode this or floss it. But you know, sophisticated attackers can encode files hundreds of times in different manners. So that's something to keep in mind. Is not all malware can easily be caught just with a triage, like I'm showing you guys here. some of that takes a little bit more time. But that's why the mix of static and dynamic analysis can be really powerful, because we can actually look at it. Once we see what the file does, it's a little bit easier to perhaps decode it, or vice versa. Okay. Still running. So while this is running, let's get started with the dynamic analysis. I'm not going to start that yet, but let me show you the tools that I used. There's more tools in this. I'm not even sure what they do. However, let me show you what has been effective for me. Oh, and it finished. So we're going to get into that. All right. So the main goals that we look for in both static and dynamic analysis, we want to look for, I guess what you would call, you want to look at what the indicators are. I'm trying to figure out how to say that. You want to look for the indicators of maliciousness in both the static and dynamic, but also you want to look at the hardware and the network based. So let's go and open this guy up. All right. So ranking strings has come in for the win here.
evil.mandiant.com.
Yes. Sorry, coming up with it used to say something like a weird domain. I replaced it. All right. So this is a network-based indicator.
Level1.mdt. What's that?
Actually, I don't know what is an MDT file. Couldn't tell you.
I'll look it up.
Look it up. All right. So let's go down. Let's go down. So there's all of these things are functions, by the way. I'm not getting into these, but you can look up what these functions do. And some of them might do something that, say a calculator.exe probably shouldn't be calling on the authentication section of Windows or stuff like that, right? Won't get into those right now. It's interesting, actually.
It's a post request.
You know what? All right.
There's a string for
Can-
a user agent.
Do you think this is useful?
Yeah, it's making a web request.
Right. Do you know what's really useful about this user agent?
You can look it up in your NIDS.
It's unique.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. It's unique. But you know what? This specific instance is super unique because there's a typo in it. If you look here, this user agent has a typo. How unique is this string right there? That's pretty dang unique for malware.
Where's the typo?
There should be a space after this comma. Or, yeah, semicolon. Thank you. So things like this are what malware researchers live for, especially if they work for like a cybersecurity company. They're trying to create a profile on a threat actor, or creating like indicators that they can pipe into like whatever Cobalt Strike, Carbon Black, FireEye, whatever it might be. These are indicators that are unique enough to this malware that can give it away.
Yeah, malware authors will often copy and paste stuff all the time, just like all of us. And they'll copy and paste the same stuff.
So in this case, mistyped user agent, very useful. And so these are the things that we look for. This is the gold mine for static analysis. We could dive more into these other functions that it's doing, right? In fact, I think at the top we saw a. Come on, please. There you go. Look at these functions that it's calling. It's opening up something to the web, and based on the URL on the top, probably talking to that. I mean, not all malware will say evil in it, but let's keep going down, and then we're gonna. I think that's probably good enough. We could dive into the functions later. Not enough time for today. So now let's go to the dynamic analysis. We're going to be using 3 tools for dynamic analysis. Some of you guys, especially if you guys are Windows admins, might be very familiar with these tools. First one, Process Explorer. Pretty simple, but also really powerful. It's basically just a better task manager. Some of you guys might, I used this before I even was thinking about malware analysis. What's kind of cool is it has a Virustotal section built into it. Also has a verified signer. That doesn't mean everything, the verified signer, but the Virustotal can be helpful too. In this case, my VM is not connected to the network because I'm about to detonate this. It is harmless, but just good practice not to. This VM, when you're looking at malware, what you do is you should switch your virtual machine to host only. You should never risk it. From a malware analysis perspective, like professionally, there's a lot of reasons why you might not do that. Say malware is crafted specifically for maybe your company, or you're analyzing it for another company. You don't want it to phone home and the hackers say, oh, this isn't coming from our target, let's pack up shop. Okay, so there's a lot of reasons why you don't want malware reaching out to the internet. Or what if it reaches out and hacks someone else and you're just perpetuating the problem? Or if you're doing it from a corporate network, you guys have legal issues coming for you. All right, that's the first tool, Process Explorer. Pretty simple, just going to show us what's running on the system. Few options I'm going to change. I just want to change it so new actions highlight differently. Actually, okay, no, it's already using my same settings. Because typically things will flash like green when new ones show up and go away after 1 second. I switched it to 9 just so I have more time to look at it to see what it's doing. Okay, next one is Procmon. Really powerful tool. Again, Windows admins use it all the time for troubleshooting things, various programs. But what it does, it keeps track of basically every action on the system. Every registry modified, every file read, every file write, network events even. Just it look at this. In a few seconds, almost 200,000 events recorded, which that's a lot of data. But this is something you can just get with sysinternals from Windows. Really awesome. Both of these are Windows sysinternals tools. So far, all Windows tools that I'm using for this. The next one is not, but this one's awesome.
Oh, I love this tool.
Yeah, I knew Mike would love it. I haven't been able to talk to you about it, but I knew you'd love it. FakeNet. I got to run one more time. This happens sometimes. Okay, so what FakeNet does is it's a fake network, as the name insinuates. So if you look here, Chrome tried to reach out to this. Basically, it tricks everything on the system into thinking that it's connected to the internet by responding with it like, hey, yeah, you're connected, and like, hey, here's a blank response, and here's a file. So the system obviously is busy. The system hasn't been connected to the internet for like a month. So, Windows is probably trying to update and stuff. But that's okay.
Close Chrome.
I should probably close Chrome. You're right. Let's try to cut out some of the noise. It's probably a lot of it was coming from that, but system. Okay, so now let's detonate. Let's get to it. Let's just detonate the malware. Okay, so it's the original file. I don't know if it has to be run as admin. We're just gonna do it anyway. Okay, actually, sorry. Let's. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it on this side, and then we're gonna have this guy on this side, just like that. And now we're gonna run it, so we can actually kind of see what's going on the system. And again, we have that Procmon running in the background. All right. Let's wait.
Oh, look, there's request for evil.mandy@.com.
Yep. So we have a.
A DNS request.
Yep.
A level 1 payload.exe.
Wait, where did that show? Yep. There you go.
Well,
Let's see. It's not signed either. So we have a level 1 payload.exe that started running. We have a network attempt reaching out to evil.mandy.com. Based on the static indicators and the dynamic analysis of this, if I was looking at this, I would say at the very base level, what this is a backdoor. It's reaching out to a CNC server, waiting for something to do. It's not going to do any. It's not doing anything because it's waiting. All right, so now we know what this malware does. In addition to that, if you want to dive into it, so now we have Procmon, right? That captured everything, right? So let's stop the capture because this thing's going to get massive. It's almost at 1 million events. I know you should know how to use this one, Troy. Wait, where is it?
Click on
File. Oh, that's what it was. Thank you. Okay. So now let's filter. All right. So let's include.
level 1.
Yeah, let's do that.
I've never seen this. This is cool.
Level 1 script payload.exe and include add apply. Oh, what did I?
Architecture is.
Oh, I didn't see that. process name is,
Oh, you lost that.
oh, geez. Okay, hold up. Level 1 underscore payload.exe, then add, apply, boom. So now we get to look at everything that this file is doing.
That's a lot of stuff.
It is a lot of stuff. In fact, it's 5,000 events. But that's the nature of Windows, and I guess maybe computers in general. They do a lot of stuff. So let's just quickly scroll through here.
Is your
It's
net?
32-bit.
True. So it's loading quite a few of DLLs on the system, which we could look up what they do.
It creates a file.
Yeah, it did,
Let's
but
look in 801 Labs, see if there's a file in there.
it showed it as blank, so I'm guessing, oh, wait, no. Okay, by the way, these two packet captures, those are from FakeNet. I just had my directory there. But so what's great about FakeNet too is now I can just open up these and look at those. Oh, not that one, this one. I can look at the PCAPs if I wanted, and see the actual traffic in this nature, which is awesome. Or going back to Security Onion, you can actually import packets and replay them through Security Onion, and then see what alerts you get on Security Onion. So that's kind of cool too. Okay, wait. So let's go back to this. It didn't create a file. I have seen that sometimes. Maybe it temporarily created one and deleted it, which we could also see here. Let's go up.
10 files.
Yeah, a lot of temp files. Sometimes some of this is noise. A lot of files do this. So not everything here is
Windows being Windows.
Windows is being Windows. Even malware still has to do Windows stuff. All right, let's see. And this is everything. We're diving into it. This one's interesting. Why is it touching LDAP? Yeah, I'd look into that. Again, I'm not.
Credentials.
Yeah. That's probably what it's doing. It's probably looking at credentials and going to send it back to that evil domain. Yeah, and so we could. I mean, this is enough data with the PCAPs, with the process monitor dump, with the static analysis. I think we can get a pretty good idea of at least what this malware does. And if you were working for a large company or maybe a cybersecurity company, you could probably create some indicators that you could throw into your. I mean, in this case, I'm not going to get into it, but we could actually, because I'm not even that good at it, but we could write a snort rule for this and import it into Security Onion at our home, and then have an alert trigger if it sees something like this. But you can see the usefulness of that in a either if you're providing for a lot of companies or for your own company. If you find malware, you can actually create rules that alert on it if it's seen again, based on our static and dynamic analysis. But yeah, that's about it. That's all I had for you guys. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to be here for a while, so I appreciate your time listening to me. And thanks for coming.
All right.